Welcome to this gentle journey through the dawn of humanity, a time long before cities, kings, or empires, a time when our ancestors first began to walk the earth. Long ago, tens of thousands of years before our modern world, the earth was a very different place. Vast forests stretched across continents. Enormous animals roamed wild and free, and the skies held stars that shone brighter in the clear night air. It was in this ancient world that the first humans appeared, not the people we see today, but early relatives who shared our curious minds and steady hands. These were the first steps in a long, slow journey of becoming who we are now, the first humans. Our story begins in Africa, the warm cradle of humanity. Around 2 million years ago, early humans called Homo habilis started to appear. They were different from the apes around them. They walked upright, used simple tools, and were beginning to think in new ways. Over time, many species of early humans came and went. One of the most important was Homo erectus, who lived about 1.9 million years ago. They were taller, smarter, and some learned to control fire. This ability to create and manage fire was like a spark that would ignite the future of mankind. Fire brought warmth on cold nights, protection from wild animals, and a new way to cook food, making it easier to digest and safer to eat. Imagine the comfort of sitting around a glowing fire with others, sharing stories and plans. This was the beginning of human culture. Hunter-gatherers in early life. For many thousands of years, humans lived as hunter-gatherers. This means they did not farm or keep animals, but moved with the seasons, hunting animals and gathering fruits, nuts, and roots. Life was tough and uncertain. Each day brought the challenge of finding food, shelter, and safety. But humans were clever and adaptable. They crafted stone tools, sharp knives, spears, and scrapers to help them hunt and prepare food. Their tools grew more sophisticated over time. The chipped stones of early times became finely shaped arrowheads and blades. These small inventions made a big difference, helping humans survive in a changing world. Social groups and migration humans were not alone. They lived in small groups, bands of families that worked and traveled together. Cooperation was essential. Sharing food, caring for the young and old, and watching out for danger were all part of daily life. Around 100,000 years ago, some humans began to move out of Africa, exploring new lands. They crossed vast distances, following animals and finding new places to live. Slowly, humans spread to Asia, Europe, and eventually the farthest corners of the earth. These migrations were slow and careful. Early humans adapted to cold and hot climates, learned new ways to find food, and created tools suited for different environments. The birth of culture. As humans settled in different parts of the world, their lives became more complex. They started to create art-simple drawings on cave walls, carvings of animals, and colorful beads. These early expressions showed that humans were beginning to think beyond survival. They wondered about the world around them, and perhaps about things unseen. In some caves, deep and quiet, paintings of bison, horses, and deer still remain, telling us stories of a time when humans looked up at the stars and imagined. The Stone Age. The time when humans used mostly stone tools is called the Stone Age. It lasted for millions of years. Divided into 3 parts. The Paleolithic or Old Stone Age, when humans lived as hunters and gatherers. The Mesolithic or Middle Stone Age, when new tools and ways of living slowly appeared. The Neolithic or New Stone Age, when farming and villages began. In this first part, we focus on the Paleolithic period, where human life was simple but full of wonder. The slow dance of time. It's hard to imagine how slowly things changed then. A lifetime could pass without anything much seeming to happen. Yet, across thousands of years, small changes built the foundation for everything that followed. People learned how to make better tools, how to use fire well, and how to work together. They created language, although we will never hear their voices today, except in echoes carried by the wind. Imagine sitting beside a fire with your tribe, a crackle of flames mingling with soft whispers and the steady rhythm of a drum. Stories passed from one person to another, carrying knowledge and memories, binding the group with shared experience. The Mesolithic Age, a time of change, as the great ice sheets of the last ice age began to melt around 12,000 years ago. The Earth slowly warmed, reshaping landscapes and opening new possibilities for humans. This period, called the Mesolithic or Middle Stone Age, was a time of subtle but important change. With forests growing thicker and rivers swelling, humans began to develop new tools and ways to live. Instead of just hunting big animals that roamed the open plains, people learned to fish in rivers and seas and to gather plants in the rich new forests. They made smaller, sharper tools, microliths, that could be attached to wood or bone to create arrows and spears more effective for hunting smaller, quicker animals. Life was still mobile, moving with the seasons, but humans started to stay longer in certain places. Camps became more permanent, and some groups even began to build simple huts or shelters from wood, animal skins, and stone. The Neolithic Revolution, farming and settlements. Then came one of the most important changes in all of human history, the Neolithic Revolution. Around 10,000 years ago, humans discovered how to grow their own food and raise animals. Instead of wandering from place to place hunting and gathering, they began to farm wheat, barley, and other grains. They kept sheep, goats, and cattle for meat, milk, and hides. This change was slow and took thousands of years to spread across the world. But it meant humans could settle down and build permanent villages. Life changed in many ways. Families stayed in one place. Populations grew, and new skills like pottery, weaving, and tool-making flourished. With farming came storage. People learned to save seeds for the next planting season and to keep surplus food, allowing communities to survive hard times and harsh winters. Building villages and early societies. Imagine the first small villages with round houses made of mud, straw, and wood. Smoke rising from fires, children playing, and the quiet buzz of daily life. In these villages, people worked together planting fields, caring for animals, making tools, and sharing stories. Communities grew, and with them, a sense of belonging and shared identity. Trade began to emerge too. Villagers exchanged goods like flint for making tools, or shells and stones for decoration. Slowly, these networks connected distant groups, spreading ideas and culture. The birth of new technologies. In this quiet time of settlement and growth, humans created many new technologies that would shape the future. Pottery, containers to store food and water, decorated with patterns and symbols. Weaving, cloth made from flax or wool to keep warm and comfortable. Polished stone tools, sharper, stronger blades, and axes. Early metallurgy, small amounts of copper worked into tools and ornaments. Each new invention was a small step forward, the result of patient trial and error, and the desire to make life easier and more beautiful. Early beliefs and rituals. As humans lived closer together, they also began to think about the world in new ways. Burial sites show that they cared for their dead, sometimes placing goods like tools, jewelry, or food with them. This suggests early beliefs about an afterlife or spirit world. Some stone circles and mysterious monuments date back to this time, reminders of ceremonies, gatherings, or perhaps attempts to understand the stars and seasons. The famous site of Göbekli Tepe in modern-day Turkey, built around 11,000 years ago, is one of the oldest known religious temples. It shows that humans were gathering for rituals long before they built cities or kingdoms. The dawn of civilization. Mesopotamia, the cradle of life, as the Neolithic Age gave way to new eras. The small villages grew into larger communities, and the seeds of civilization began to take root. One of the most remarkable places where this happened was Mesopotamia, a land between two great rivers, the Tigris and Euphrates, in what is now modern-day Iraq. Mesopotamia means between rivers, and this fertile land was a gift from nature. The rivers brought water and rich soil, allowing people to grow abundant crops and support growing populations. Here, about 6,000 years ago, humans began to build the first true cities. Places like Uruk, Ur, and Babylon grew from simple settlements into bustling centers filled with homes, markets, temples, and palaces. The birth of writing, one of the greatest inventions of Mesopotamia, was writing. At first, it was simple marks pressed into clay tablets to keep track of goods and trade. Over time, this system developed into cuneiform, one of the world's earliest writing forms. Writing changed everything. It allowed people to record laws, stories, and history. It connected rulers with their subjects and helped organize the complex tasks of running a city. Imagine a scribe carefully pressing a reed stylus into soft clay, creating symbols that would survive thousands of years to tell us about life long ago. Kings, temples, and laws. As cities grew, they needed leaders to keep order. Kings ruled over the land, commanding armies and building great monuments. Temples rose as centers of worship, dedicated to gods who controlled the forces of nature and life. One famous king, Hammurabi of Babylon, created a code of laws, the Hammurabi Code, carved onto a stone pillar. These laws were some of the first written rules that governed how people should live and treat one another. Though harsh by today's standards, they reflected a growing sense of justice and social order in a complex society. Daily life in ancient Mesopotamia, life in these early cities, was busy and full of variety. Farmers worked the fields, fishermen plied the rivers, craftsmen shaped clay into pottery or hammered metal into tools and jewelry. Markets bustled with traders and buyers, exchanging goods from near and far. People wore clothes made of wool and linen, decorated their homes with colorful murals, and enjoyed music and storytelling. Yet, life was not always easy. Floods from the rivers could destroy crops, and conflicts between city-states were common. But through it all, human communities grew stronger and more connected. The gift of the Nile. Ancient Egypt, not far from Mesopotamia, along the banks of another great river, the Nile, another remarkable civilization began to flourish. Ancient Egypt, often called the gift of the Nile, rose around 5,000 years ago and thrived for millennia, its story woven with mysteries, pyramids, and kings who were thought to be gods. The Nile was the heart of Egypt. Every year, the river flooded gently, depositing rich, dark soil perfect for farming. This natural rhythm brought life to a dry and sandy land, allowing Egyptians to grow wheat, barley, and flax. Imagine standing on the riverbank, watching the slow rise of the floodwaters, the water shimmering under the golden sun, carrying life to the people who depended on it. Pharaohs and pyramids. At the center of Egyptian society was the pharaoh, the king, who ruled with divine authority. Egyptians believed the pharaoh was both a king and a god on earth, the living link between heaven and the afterlife. Pharaohs built magnificent pyramids and temples as tombs and places of worship. The Great Pyramid of Giza, built for Pharaoh Khufu, is still one of the greatest architectural wonders of the ancient world. These giant stone structures were built with incredible care and precision, a testament to the skills and dedication of thousands of workers. Daily life along the Nile life in ancient Egypt was filled with rich customs and traditions. Farmers tilled the fertile land, fishermen cast their nets, and craftsmen shaped beautiful jewelry, pottery, and statues. Homes were made of sun-baked bricks, and families enjoyed meals of bread, vegetables, and fish. Children played games, learned stories of gods and heroes, and grew up learning the importance of balance and harmony values at the heart of Egyptian life. Music, dance, and festivals celebrated the rhythms of nature and the blessings of the gods. Beliefs in the afterlife. Egyptians had a deep belief in life after death. They carefully prepared their dead for the journey to the next world, preserving bodies through mummification and burying them with treasures and spells to protect them. The Book of the Dead was a guide to the afterlife, filled with prayers and magic words to help souls pass safely through challenges and reach eternal peace. This focus on the afterlife shaped much of Egyptian art, architecture, and religion, creating a culture rich in symbolism and mystery. The mysterious Indus Valley Civilization, far to the east, along the fertile plains of the Indus River, another remarkable civilization began to flourish around 4,500 years ago. The Indus Valley Civilization, sometimes called the Harappan Civilization after one of its major cities, was one of the world's earliest urban cultures, yet much about it remains a mystery. Stretching across what is today Pakistan and northwest India, the Indus people built large, well-planned cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, with straight streets, brick houses, and complex drainage systems that showed an advanced understanding of urban design. Imagine walking through these ancient streets, paved with stone, passing homes with courtyards and workshops where people crafted jewelry, pottery, and tools with great skill. A civilization of order and harmony. The cities were remarkably clean and organized, with wells for fresh water and public baths that suggest a concern for hygiene and community life. Unlike many ancient societies, the Indus Valley seemed to lack large palaces or grand temples, hinting at a society that may have been more equal and peaceful. Despite this, the people shared a rich culture with symbols, seals, and art that point to spiritual beliefs and social structures, though their language, written on thousands of seals and tablets, remains undeciphered to this day. Trade and connections. The Indus people traded widely, exchanging goods such as beads, metals, and textiles with distant regions, including Mesopotamia. This long-distance trade connected distant cultures and spread ideas and technologies. Their economy combined farming, growing wheat, barley, and cotton with skilled crafts and trade, sustaining large urban populations. The mysterious decline. Around 3,900 years ago, the Indus Valley Civilization began to decline for reasons still debated by historians. Some believe changes in the river's course, climate shifts, or earthquakes disrupted life. Whatever the cause, the cities slowly emptied, and many people moved to smaller villages or other regions. Yet the legacy of the Indus people lived on in the cultures that followed across South Asia. Ancient China, the Middle Kingdom awakens far to the east. Along the winding rivers of what we now call China, a civilization was beginning to take shape. For thousands of years, the Yellow River, also known as the Huanghe, carried fertile soil that nourished early farmers and communities. Around 4,000 years ago, the first dynasties began to rule this vast land. The Xia dynasty, though shrouded in legend, is thought to be China's earliest ruling family. After it, the Shang dynasty left behind the first written records in the form of oracle bones, animal bones and turtle shells inscribed with symbols used to ask questions to the gods. Bronze Age marvels. The Shang people were skilled metalworkers, casting bronze weapons, tools, and ritual vessels. These beautiful and intricate objects show how art and technology grew together, serving both practical and spiritual purposes. Imagine the soft glow of bronze in candlelight, the careful hands of artisans shaping metal into objects that connected the earthly world with the divine. Writing and wisdom. Ancient Chinese writing developed slowly but steadily. These early characters would eventually evolve into one of the world's oldest continuous writing systems. Beyond technology and art, ancient China gave birth to profound philosophies that would shape human thought for centuries. Confucius, Laozi, and others taught lessons about harmony, respect, and balance, ideas that grew from observing the natural world and human society. The mandate of heaven. One powerful idea from this time was the mandate of heaven. It was believed that rulers governed because the heavens chose them. If a king ruled justly, he kept this mandate, but if he became cruel or failed his people, the heavens could withdraw their favor and new rulers would rise. This concept helped explain the rise and fall of dynasties and encouraged leaders to govern wisely. Ancient China. The Middle Kingdom awakens. Far to the east, along the winding rivers of what we now call China, a civilization was beginning to take shape. For thousands of years, the Yellow River, also known as the Huanghe, carried fertile soil that nourished early farmers and communities. Around 4,000 years ago, the first dynasties began to rule this vast land. The Xia dynasty, though shrouded in legend, is thought to be China's earliest ruling family. After it, the Shang dynasty left behind the first written records in the form of oracle bones, animal bones and turtle shells inscribed with symbols used to ask questions to the gods. Bronze Age marvels. The Shang people were skilled metal workers, casting bronze weapons, tools, and ritual vessels. These beautiful and intricate objects show how art and technology grew together, serving both practical and spiritual purposes. Imagine the soft glow of bronze in candlelight, the careful hands of artisans shaping metal into objects that connected the earthly world with the divine. Writing and wisdom. Ancient Chinese writing developed slowly but steadily. These early characters would eventually evolve into one of the world's oldest continuous writing systems. Beyond technology and art, ancient China gave birth to profound philosophies that would shape human thought for centuries. Confucius, Laozi, and others taught lessons about harmony, respect, and balance, ideas that grew from observing the natural world and human society. The mandate of heaven. One powerful idea from this time was the mandate of heaven. It was believed that rulers governed because the heavens chose them. If a king ruled justly, he kept this mandate, but if he became cruel or failed his people, the heavens could withdraw their favor, and new rulers would rise. This concept helped explain the rise and fall of dynasties and encouraged leaders to govern wisely. In a warm and rocky land surrounded by blue seas, the people of ancient Greece began to write, speak, and dream in ways the world had never seen before. They lived in small city-states like Athens, Sparta, and Corinth, each with its own way of life. Some were ruled by kings, others by councils or assemblies. The Greek people believed in freedom of thought and valued discussion, debate, and the power of words. Athens became known as the home of democracy, a new idea where citizens could vote and help make decisions. It was far from perfect, but it planted seeds that would grow into future systems of government all around the world. Philosophy and thought. In shaded courtyards and open forums, thinkers sat and asked deep questions. What is truth? What is justice? How should we live? Socrates walked the streets of Athens, asking questions that made people think deeply. His student, Plato, wrote books filled with big ideas. Plato's student, Aristotle, studied the stars, the earth, and the human soul. Their thoughts still live in our world today. Art and beauty. Greek artists carved marble statues that seemed to breathe with life. Their temples, like the Parthenon, were balanced and graceful. They wrote plays, both funny and tragic, and told stories of gods, heroes, and monsters that still stir the imagination. Zeus on his throne, Athena with her owl, Apollo with his golden lyre. These were not just gods, but symbols of human dreams, fears, and hopes. Olympic Games and human spirit. Every 4 years, people from all across Greece gathered to compete in the Olympic Games running, wrestling, throwing, and jumping in honor of the gods. It was a celebration of strength, skill, and unity. The Greeks believed in the beauty of the human form and mind, and their legacy still shapes how we see art, sports, and knowledge today. While Greece thrived along the Mediterranean, a mighty empire rose to the east. The Persian Empire, stretching from the mountains of Iran to the shores of the Aegean Sea and even into parts of India and Egypt. Founded by Cyrus the Great in the 6th century BCE, Persia became one of the largest and most organized empires the world had ever seen. A gentle King Cyrus was not just a conqueror. He was a ruler who believed in respect and fairness. When he took Babylon, he allowed its people to keep their customs and religions. He freed slaves and protected sacred places. His ideas about leadership echoed in later documents, like the world's first known Declaration of Human Rights. A road across an empire. To hold such a vast empire together, the Persians built the Royal Road, over 1,500 miles long. Messengers on horseback could cross it in days, bringing news and connecting people across great distances. Their system of provinces and governors helped maintain peace and order. Their capital, Persepolis, was filled with grand halls, tall columns, and detailed carvings showing people from many lands. Belief in light and darkness. The religion of Persia, Zoroastrianism, taught that life was a struggle between light and darkness, truth and lies. People were free to choose their path, and goodness would triumph in the end. This quiet belief in balance and choice shaped how many later cultures thought about good and evil. Just south of Egypt, along the winding Nile, and nestled among hills and deserts, flourished the ancient kingdom of Nubia, also known as Kush. Though often overshadowed by its northern neighbor, Nubia was a powerful, proud civilization with its own rulers, language, and long history. As early as 2000 BC, Nubian kings ruled lands rich in gold, ivory, and precious stones. The people of Nubia were skilled traders and builders, connecting the peoples of Central Africa with Egypt and the Mediterranean world. They raised cattle, crafted fine pottery, and built tall, pointed pyramids that still stand today, quiet and timeless under the desert sky. Rivals and partners of Egypt. For centuries, Egypt and Nubia shared a complicated relationship. Sometimes they were trading partners, exchanging goods like incense, grain, and gold. At other times, they were rivals in war. But there were also times when Nubia ruled Egypt. Around 750 BCE, a powerful Nubian king named Pi marched north and united both lands. His descendants became the 25th dynasty of Egypt, the Black Pharaohs, who ruled with strength and dignity from the southern capital of Napata. These rulers restored temples, honored ancient gods, and reminded the world that African kingdoms were just as grand and wise as those to the north. The kingdom of Meru later, the Nubian capital moved farther south to Meru, a city of iron and learning. Here, for hundreds of years, queens and kings ruled a thriving society. The people of Meru wrote in their own unique script, still not fully understood, and created a culture filled with music, art, and quiet resilience. Women played powerful roles. In fact, several queens, called Candakes, ruled as monarchs, leading armies and guiding the kingdom through peace and war. The kingdom of Meru lasted nearly 1,000 years. Though time eventually quieted its voice, its memory still whispers through the stones and sand. To the east, across the Red Sea, and into the highlands of what is now Ethiopia, the kingdom of Aksum began to rise. By the 1st century CE, Aksum had become a strong trading empire. Its ships sailed across the Red Sea to Arabia and India, carrying spices, gold, ivory, and silk. Aksum's markets were filled with goods from all corners of the known world. A new faith blossoms. In the 4th century CE, Aksum became one of the first kingdoms in the world to adopt Christianity, even before many parts of Europe. The king, Ezana, embraced the faith and built churches and stone monuments to honor it. The famous stele of Aksum tall stone obelisks, carved with windows and doors, still stand, reaching silently toward the sky. They marked graves, honored rulers, and reminded all who saw them of Aksum's greatness. A lasting legacy. The people of Aksum developed their own written language, Jiyas, and passed down stories, songs, and sacred texts. Today, Ethiopia remains one of the world's oldest Christian cultures, still connected to the traditions of Aksum. Though the empire eventually declined, it never truly disappeared. Its spirit lived on in the Ethiopian highlands, a mountain cradle of faith, strength, and memory. After the mysterious decline of the Indus Valley civilization, new cultures began to bloom across the Indian subcontinent. Villages grew near rivers like the Ganges and Yamuna, and people brought with them new languages, beliefs, and ways of life. By 1500 BCE, the Vedic Age had begun. Named for the Vedas, ancient texts filled with hymns and teachings, this period laid the foundation for what would become Hinduism, one of the oldest living religions in the world. The Vedas spoke of gods like Indra, Agni, and Varuna, of sacred fires, and of balance between humans and nature. These poems were passed down by memory, recited like lullabies across generations. Caste and culture. During this time, Indian society began to organize itself into groups, later known as castes. People were born into roles such as priests, warriors, farmers, and craftsmen. Over time, this system became deeply rooted in everyday life, shaping how people lived, worked, and married. But this world was also full of color and creativity. People sang songs, told epic stories like the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, and built temples and altars where fire flickered and chants rose to the heavens. The Mauryan Empire, Chandragupta and Ashoka. Then, in the 4th century BCE, a great empire rose to unite much of the Indian subcontinent under one banner, the Mauryan Empire. Its founder, Chandragupta Maurya, rose from humble beginnings to become a powerful ruler. With the help of his wise advisor, Chanakya, he defeated rival kings and established a strong and organized state. But it was his grandson, Ashoka the Great, who would become one of the most memorable rulers in world history. Ashoka's awakening at first. Ashoka ruled with strength in war. But after witnessing the terrible suffering caused by one of his conquests, the Battle of Kalinga, he changed. He turned away from violence and embraced Buddhism, a new faith that taught peace, compassion, and a quiet path of wisdom. Ashoka spread these teachings not with swords, but with stone. He carved edicts across his empire, messages of kindness, tolerance, and love for all living beings. He planted trees, built hospitals, and sent messengers of peace to distant lands. Even today, many of his messages remain, still standing silently in stone, whispering gently to those who listen. Now let us return to the east, to the mountains, rivers, and misty valleys of ancient China. In this quiet land of jade and paper scrolls, we will witness the rise of powerful dynasties that shaped a civilization known for its wisdom, discipline, and harmony. Long after the Shang and Zhou dynasties laid the foundation of early Chinese culture, a time of chaos known as the Warring States period gripped the land. Many small kingdoms fought endlessly for control, each dreaming of unity. Then, from the western state of Qin, rose a powerful leader who would bring all of China under one rule for the first time in its history. His name was Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor. Qin Shi Huang was a man of ambition and discipline. By 221 BCE, he had conquered all rival states and declared himself emperor of China. His dynasty, though short-lived, left a deep mark on the country. He built roads and canals, unified weights, measures, and even the written script, helping different regions understand one another. He began the construction of what would later become the Great Wall of China, meant to protect his people from invasions. But he ruled with strict laws and harsh punishments, believing that order could only come through control. His court was quiet and tightly watched. Books that disagreed with the empire's laws were burned, and scholars were silenced. The Terracotta Army, As he aged, Qin Shi Huang feared death and searched desperately for a way to live forever. He ordered the creation of a massive tomb, guarded by thousands of life-size statues, soldiers, horses, and chariots, all carved from clay. These silent warriors, known as the Terracotta Army, still stand in formation today, frozen in time beneath the earth, keeping watch over their emperor. Though Qin Shi Huang died young and his dynasty collapsed soon after, the foundation he laid would support future greatness. Following the fall of the Qin, a new dynasty rose, the Han Dynasty, which would rule for over 400 years and become one of the most glorious ages in Chinese history. The Han emperors, especially Emperor Wu, brought peace, prosperity, and learning to China. They reopened the country's gates to the world, encouraging trade, invention, and diplomacy. The Silk Road. It was during this time that the Silk Road began, a series of trade routes that connected China to Central Asia, the Middle East, and even parts of Europe. Silk, porcelain, tea, and paper flowed outward, while spices, jewels, and ideas came in. Caravans of camels moved silently through deserts. At each stop, travelers shared not just goods, but stories, songs, and customs. Paper, science, and scholars. During the Han Dynasty, the invention of paper changed the world forever. It allowed people to write more easily, spreading education and preserving thoughts for generations to come. Astronomers studied the stars. Doctors wrote down remedies. Historians like Sima Qian recorded the great stories of China in beautiful detail. Confucianism, the gentle philosophy of kindness, respect, and balance, became the guiding light of Han government and life. Schools taught the teachings of Confucius. Officials were chosen by merit, not just birth. Ancient China was a land of emperors and warriors, but also of poets and painters, dreamers and philosophers. Their whispers still travel with the wind. Would you like me to continue next with the rise of Rome, the eternal city, and the heart of a growing empire in the West? Long ago, along the banks of the Tiber River in what is now Italy, a small village was born. According to legend, it was founded by Romulus, a boy raised by a wolf, who would become the first king of a city named Rome. Over time, this little village grew, not through sudden glory, but through steady strength. Farmers became soldiers. Traders built roads. Families formed councils. Rome became a republic, where elected leaders, not kings, guided the people. This balance between power and responsibility became the heart of Roman identity and would echo in governments centuries later. As a republic, Rome created systems that made society strong. Senators debated policies. Citizens voted. Soldiers trained with quiet discipline, ready to defend their homeland. Rome built roads, long, straight paths of stone that stretched across hills and valleys, rivers and plains. These roads connected cities, brought goods to markets, and allowed messages to move quickly. The Roman law code, known as the 12 Tables, laid down rules for daily life, protecting property, settling disputes, and treating people fairly under the law. It became one of Rome's most lasting gifts to the world. Rome's legions, organized and disciplined, helped it grow stronger. They were not just fighters, but builders, engineers, and settlers. As Rome expanded across Italy and beyond, it welcomed new people into its fold, but even the strongest systems faced change. In the 1st century BCE, a brilliant general named Julius Caesar rose to power. He conquered distant lands, brought great wealth to Rome, and became loved by the people. But with power came tension. Some feared he wanted to become a king. In 44 BCE, on the Ides of March, Caesar was assassinated by men he once called friends, a quiet moment that changed the world. Rome fell into civil war, and from the chaos, a new leader emerged, Octavian, Caesar's adopted son, who would become Augustus, the first emperor of Rome. Under Augustus, Rome entered a long period of peace known as the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. For over 200 years, the empire grew in strength, culture, and knowledge. At its height, Rome stretched from Britain to Egypt, from Spain to the Middle East. In cities across the empire, people spoke Latin or Greek, watched plays and chariot races, and lived in homes with running water and heated floors. Romans built aqueducts to carry fresh water, amphitheaters for public entertainment, and temples to honor gods like Jupiter, Mars, and Venus. Emperors came and went, some wise, some cruel, some beloved. Each left their mark in stone, coin, or story. Rome was more than just armies and emperors. It was a dream of order, of law, of beauty, and its whispers still guide the world today. With gentle steps, let us now cross great oceans of time and space, away from the familiar empires of Europe, Asia, and Africa, and into the lush forests, high mountains, and golden valleys of the ancient Americas. Here, mighty civilizations rose, each with their own calendars, temples, and quiet wisdom. Long before European ships ever crossed the Atlantic, the peoples of the Americas had already built complex and beautiful worlds. They observed the stars, farmed with care, raised cities in jungles and mountains, and honored gods with music, colors, and stone. Let us begin in the tropical forests of Central America, where the skies once glowed with the fire of sacred knowledge. The Maya civilization thrived in what is now southern Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, and Honduras. They built great cities like Tikal, Palenque, and Chichen Itza, filled with pyramids, temples, all courts, and stone palaces. The Maya were mathematicians, astronomers, and artists. They created a writing system of intricate symbols called glyphs, carved into stone and painted onto delicate bark paper books. They developed an incredibly accurate calendar system, tracking the cycles of the sun, moon, and planets with remarkable precision. For the Maya, time was sacred, a divine rhythm that guided planting, praying, and kingship. Imagine quiet nights beneath the jungle sky, where Maya priests gazed upward to read the heavens, listening for the voices of gods written in stars. Farther north, in the Valley of Mexico, the Aztecs built a powerful empire centered around the stunning island city of Tenochtitlan, now Mexico City. The Aztecs believed that the sun needed strength from human hearts to rise each day. Their ceremonies, though difficult to imagine today, were acts of deep faith. They built grand temples, especially the great Templo Mayor, where priests sang, danced, and offered gifts to their gods. Their empire was filled with markets, schools, and laws. Farmers grew maize, beans, squash, and chili peppers on floating gardens called chinapas. Warriors earned honor on the battlefield. Merchants traveled far with cocoa, jade, and obsidian. Artisans crafted gold jewelry and feathered robes that shimmered like the sun itself. The Aztecs, like the Maya, told stories in picture books and spoke of gods who had once created and destroyed the world, again and again, in cycles of time. High in the towering Andes of South America, the Inca Empire rose. It became the largest empire ever seen in the Americas, stretching thousands of miles along the spine of what is now Peru, Ecuador, Bolivia, and Chile. The Inca did not use writing as we know it. Instead, they used quipu, cords with knots, to record numbers and messages. They built vast road networks through mountains and valleys, with messengers called chasqui running from post to post. Their capital, Cusco, was the navel of the world, a sacred center with golden temples and finely cut stones that fit so perfectly, no mortar was needed. One of their most beautiful creations was Machu Picchu, a quiet city high in the clouds, built with breathtaking harmony between stone and mountain. The Inca worshipped Inti, the sun god, and believed their emperor, Esapa Inca, was his son on earth. With care and order, They managed farmlands using terraces, stored food for hard times, and cared for their people like family. Then let us now move gently into the golden lands of the Middle East, where once, under the soft light of crescent moons and the glow of oil lamps, scholars wrote, poets dreamed, and cities shimmered with wisdom. This is the story of the great Islamic caliphates, empires of both faith and knowledge. In the 7th century CE, in the vast desert sands of Arabia, a new voice began to speak. The voice of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. He taught of one God, of kindness, charity, prayer, and the unity of all people. His words, gathered in the Quran, became the heart of a great spiritual and cultural movement, Islam. After his passing, the leadership of the Muslim world passed to a line of caliphs, religious and political leaders, who helped guide the faithful and build the early Islamic empires. The first 4 caliphs, known as the Rashidun, were close companions of Muhammad and ruled with simplicity and devotion. Under their guidance, Islam spread from Mecca and Medina into the lands of the Byzantine and Persian empires. Then came the Umayyad Caliphate with its capital in Damascus. The Umayyads expanded the Muslim world from Spain in the west to India in the east. Though their rule was strong, it was also met with resistance, and in time they were replaced. In 750 CE, the Abbasid Caliphate rose to power and moved the capital to a new city, Baghdad, which would become one of the greatest centers of learning the world had ever known. Baghdad was not just a city, it was a dream. At its heart stood the House of Wisdom, where scholars from many lands and religions gathered to translate ancient Greek, Persian, Indian, and Roman texts into Arabic. Here, mathematics blossomed. The Indian number system, including the number 0, was adopted and refined. It became what we now call Arabic numerals. Astronomers mapped the stars. Doctors wrote textbooks that would guide healing for centuries. Chemists, philosophers, and geographers shared ideas, explored science, and pondered the mysteries of creation. The Islamic Golden Age was not just about science. It was also an age of beauty. Artists crafted delicate patterns that reflected the infinite. Poets like Rumi and Hafez wrote words that still stir hearts today. Mosques rose with towering minarets and intricate mosaics. Calligraphy, the art of beautiful writing, turned holy verses into visual prayers. Gardens were designed as glimpses of paradise on earth. Across North Africa, the Middle East, and parts of Europe and Asia, this golden thread of faith and thought connected many cultures. Then let us now drift gently back to the vast and golden lands of Africa, where rivers wing through ancient valleys and voices carry wisdom through the ages. Here, in the heart of West Africa, powerful kingdoms once flourished, built not on stone alone, but on learning, trade, and the rhythm of the desert winds. Far from the pyramids of Egypt and the shores of Aksum, powerful empires rose in the interior of West Africa, near the Niger River and the southern edge of the Sahara Desert. These were the kingdoms of Ghana, Mali, and Songhai, rich in gold, strong in spirit, and filled with traditions that still shape the soul of Africa today. The first of these great kingdoms was Ghana, which rose to power around the 6th century CE. Though not located in modern-day Ghana, this kingdom flourished in what is now southeastern Mauritania and western Mali. Ghana was known as the land of gold. Its kings grew wealthy by controlling the trade, routes between the gold mines of the south and the salt mines of the Sahara. Salt, essential for life, was carried on long caravans of camels through the desert. Gold and ivory were traded for cloth, tools, and horses. In the capital city of Kombisale, markets bustled and the royal court shimmered with wealth. Though the kingdom eventually declined, it laid the foundation for the even greater empires to come. In the 13th century, the Mali Empire rose to take Ghana's place. It became one of the largest and most influential empires in African history. Its most famous ruler was Mansa Musa, who reigned in the 14th century. He is remembered not just for his immense wealth. He is often called the richest man in history, but for his generosity, his love of learning, and his famous pilgrimage to Mecca. Mansa Musa traveled across the Sahara with tens of thousands of attendants, camels loaded with gold, and gifts for every city he passed. He built mosques, funded schools, and left a trail of kindness and wonder across North Africa and the Middle East. Timbuktu, a center of learning. Under Mali's rule, the city of Timbuktu became a great center of learning. It housed libraries filled with thousands of manuscripts on astronomy, medicine, poetry, and law. Scholars from across Africa and beyond came to study in its universities. Timbuktu was more than a city. It was a beacon of African wisdom. In the 5th-10th century, the Songhai Empire rose to power after Mali's decline. Its capital, Gao, became a vibrant center of trade, politics, and religion. The Songhai rulers, especially Askia Muhammad, built a strong system of government with ministers, governors, and laws. He too made a pilgrimage to Mecca and encouraged learning and justice throughout his realm. The empire thrived with organized markets, vast armies, and open doors to travelers and merchants. These African empires were kingdoms of vision and voice, places where wisdom was as valuable as gold, and where the memory of kings still dances in the songs of storytellers. Let us now cross gently into the cool, green hills and ancient forests of medieval Europe, where stone castles rise above misty valleys and quiet monasteries preserve the fragile light of knowledge through dark times. Here begins a new chapter of history, told softly, like a lullaby for the ages. After the fall of the mighty Roman Empire, Europe entered a time often called the Middle Ages, a period lasting nearly 1,000 years. It was a world of scattered kingdoms and tiny villages, where kings ruled lands through loyal nobles, and farmers worked the earth from dawn to dusk. The people of medieval Europe lived in a system called feudalism. At its heart was a simple exchange. Kings gave land to nobles. Nobles promised loyalty and soldiers, and peasants worked the land, growing food for all. This system created a quiet order in a chaotic world, like the slow turning of the seasons. Lords built castles, strong stone homes to protect their families and people. Inside thick walls, life was often harsh, but filled with small joys. The crackle of firewood, the smell of fresh bread, and the laughter of children. The medieval knight is a figure both real and legendary. Trained from childhood, knights learned to ride horses, wield swords, and live by a code called chivalry, which meant bravery, honor, and kindness to those in need. Tournaments brought excitement and sport, with jousts and contests under banners fluttering in the breeze. But knights also fought in wars to defend their lords and lands, sometimes marching to distant places far from home. In this time of castles and battles, the quiet monasteries were havens of peace and learning. Monks lived simple lives, praying, copying books by hand, and tending gardens. Their scriptoria, rooms filled with candles and quiet scribes, kept alive the wisdom of ancient Rome, Greece, and beyond. Without them, many of the old stories, philosophies, and sciences might have been lost to the shadows. Some monasteries also served as hospitals and schools, places where travelers found rest and villagers learned to read. Medieval Europe was a world of contrasts: strength and faith, war and peace, darkness, and the slow dawn of new ideas. The Catholic Church was the center of spiritual life in medieval Europe. Cathedrals rose with soaring spires and colorful stained glass that told stories of saints and scripture. The Church's power reached far, guiding kings and commoners alike, shaping laws, holidays, and festivals. Yet beneath this power were countless small moments of faith: the soft toll of bells at dawn, candles flickering on stone altars, and quiet prayers whispered under starry skies. With quiet excitement, let us now move gently from the shadowed halls of medieval castles into the bright, and blossoming gardens of the Renaissance, a time when the world slowly awakened to new light, art, and knowledge. This was a gentle rebirth, like the first warm breeze after a long winter's sleep. Beginning in the 14th century, in the cities of Italy like Florence, Venice, and Rome, people started to look back at the wisdom of ancient Greece and Rome, not as distant echoes, but as living inspiration. They believed in the power of the human mind and spirit, and sought to understand the world with fresh eyes. The Renaissance gave the world some of its most beloved artists and thinkers. Leonardo da Vinci, a painter, inventor, and dreamer, studied everything from birds' wings to human anatomy. His paintings, like the Mona Lisa, glow softly with mystery and grace. Michelangelo carved marble into shapes that seemed to breathe, like his famous statue of David and the painted ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. New inventions, like the printing press by Johannes Gutenberg, spread ideas quickly, like seeds on the wind. The Renaissance was also a time of quiet wonder at the stars and the earth. Nicolaus Copernicus gently proposed that the earth was not the center of the universe, but one of many planets circling the sun, a bold idea that changed how we see our place in the cosmos. Galileo Galilei looked through telescopes at the moon's craters and Jupiter's moons, quietly proving that the universe was far larger and more mysterious than anyone had imagined. Brave sailors set out on long voyages, crossing oceans in wooden ships. Christopher Columbus sailed westward in 1492, reaching lands unknown to Europeans. Soon after, Ferdinand Magellan's expedition circled the globe, proving the Earth's roundness and vastness. Though these journeys brought encounters that changed the world forever, they also marked the beginning of difficult times for many peoples. At the heart of the Renaissance was humanism, the belief that people, their thoughts, and their feelings mattered deeply. Writers, poets, and philosophers wrote about human dignity, freedom, and the beauty of life. This gentle awakening would lead to many changes in art, religion, politics, and science, slowly shaping the world we live in today. The Renaissance was a time of new light, a world stretching awake and reaching toward the future with hope and wonder. Well, let us now move softly into the calm glow of the Age of Enlightenment, a time when the light of reason and gentle thought began to brighten the world, encouraging people to ask new questions and imagine a future shaped by knowledge, freedom, and kindness. Spanning the 17th and 18th centuries, the Enlightenment was an era where philosophers, scientists, and writers sought to understand the world through reason rather than tradition or superstition. They believed that by using careful thought, humans could improve society and live in harmony. Thinkers like John Locke, Voltaire, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, and Immanuel Kant wrote quietly but powerfully about liberty, equality, and the rights of individuals. John Locke imagined that people are born with natural rights to life, liberty, and property, and that governments should protect these rights with the consent of the governed. Voltaire championed freedom of speech and religion, using his sharp wit to speak softly against injustice. Rousseau dreamed of a social contract, a peaceful agreement between people and rulers to form a fair society. These ideas were like soft seeds, planted carefully in minds across Europe and beyond. The Age of Enlightenment was also a time when science flourished. Isaac Newton quietly revealed the laws of motion and gravity, showing how the universe moves with gentle precision. Benjamin Franklin, inventor and thinker, studied electricity with simple experiments, a kite and a key in a storm, unlocking secrets that would power the future. Others mapped the human body, explored nature's patterns, and invented tools that made life easier. The ideas of the Enlightenment inspired many peaceful movements and revolutions. In 1776, the American colonies declared independence, embracing the belief that governments should serve the people, not rule them. Soon after, the French Revolution began, seeking to end old privileges and build a society based on equality and fraternity. though its path was not always quiet or gentle. Across the world, the call for human rights, justice, and education grew louder, slowly spreading like dawn light across darkened lands. Art, music, and literature blossomed during this time. Composers like Mozart and Haydn filled concert halls with delicate symphonies. Writers penned novels that explored the heart and mind, while painters captured the beauty of nature and humanity with soft, careful strokes. The Age of Enlightenment was a time when the human spirit reached quietly for understanding, hope, and the gentle light of reason. Very well. Let us now gently step into the soft hum and steady rhythm of the Industrial Revolution, a time when the quiet hands of invention and new machines began to reshape the world, slowly changing how people lived, worked, and dreamed. The Industrial Revolution, the quiet turning of machines and minds. Beginning in the late 18th century, mostly in England, the Industrial Revolution marked a profound shift from small farms and workshops to factories filled with steam engines, spinning wheels, and new tools. New machines and factories' inventors, like James Watt, improved the steam engine, making it powerful enough to run trains and ships. This quiet power opened new paths for trade and travel. The spinning jenny and power loom transformed the way cloth was made, allowing for faster production. Factories rose in towns and cities, humming with the sound of machinery and filled with workers who moved with careful precision. Life changes slowly. Life for many people changed quietly but deeply. Families moved from rural fields to crowded cities, where days were long and filled with the steady clatter of machines. Though work was hard and often dangerous, new goods became available. Fabric, tools, and objects that made everyday life easier. Trains connected distant places, bringing fresh food and ideas across countries. New ideas and challenges. With these changes came new thoughts about work, fairness, and society. Workers began to organize quietly, seeking better hours, safer conditions, and respect. Philosophers and economists like Karl Marx and Adam Smith wrote about how economies worked and how people could live more justly. Science and innovation. The Industrial Revolution also fueled advances in science and medicine. Vaccines began to protect people from diseases. Electricity started to light homes and streets, promising a gentler, brighter future. The Industrial Revolution was a time of steady progress, of human hands shaping the world quietly, one invention at a time. Very well. Let us now move softly into the unfolding story of the modern era, the 20th century, a time of great change, challenge, and hope, where the quiet currents of history surge forward with both light and shadow. The 20th century was a time unlike any before. It saw the world connected as never before, with inventions that shrank distances and ideas that spread quickly. Yet it was also a time of conflict and courage, of new hopes and hard lessons. The great wars, shadows, and strength. The century began with a devastating conflict, World War I, known then as the Great War. Millions of soldiers faced quiet, endless trenches and fierce battles across Europe. The war's end brought hope, but also fragile peace. Just 2 decades later, World War II engulfed the world in even greater turmoil. Nations fought fiercely across land, sea, and sky. Amidst the darkness, stories of bravery and kindness shone through. Resistance fighters, medics, and everyday heroes. Inventions that changed life during this century. Inventions transformed daily life. The airplane made distant lands closer, opening the skies to travel. The radio and later, television brought news and stories into homes worldwide. The computer began quietly in labs, promising to change how we think and work. Medicine advanced with antibiotics and vaccines, saving millions of lives. Social change and movements. The 20th century saw voices rise for civil rights, women's suffrage, and peace. Leaders like Martin Luther King Jr., Mahatma Gandhi, and Nelson Mandela showed the power of gentle resistance and hope. people around the world worked to break down barriers, seeking freedom and equality, often through patient courage and quiet protests. The space age, reaching for the stars. In the mid-century, humanity reached beyond Earth. The space race saw satellites circle the globe and astronauts walk on the moon in 1969, a small step that opened the door to endless wonder. A connected world by the century's end, the internet began to connect millions of people, sharing ideas, stories, and friendship across continents with the click of a button. The 20th century was a time of both shadow and light, of great struggles and remarkable leaps shaping the world we call home today. Certainly, let us now gently step into the unfolding story of the 21st century, a time still being written, filled with new hopes, challenges, and the quiet pulse of human connection. The new millennium arrived with a whisper of promise and the hum of technology weaving the world ever closer. People live more connected than ever before, sharing ideas, cultures, and dreams across digital skies. Technology and communication, from smartphones in the palms of our hands to satellites watching over Earth, technology has transformed the way we learn, work, and relate. Social media spreads news and stories instantly, connecting friends and strangers alike. Yet this rapid sharing brings both light and shadow, teaching us to seek truth and kindness amid the noise. Artificial intelligence, space exploration, and renewable energy hint at futures both exciting and uncertain. Global challenges. The 21st century faces quiet but profound challenges. Climate change reminds us of the fragile beauty of our planet and calls for care and cooperation. Pandemics show how interconnected we are as the world works together to heal and protect. Social justice movements continue to raise voices for equality, inclusion, and respect. Through it all, millions of people work gently, yet persistently toward a better tomorrow. Culture and creativity, art, music, and storytelling flourish in new forms, from films and video games to global festivals celebrating diversity and heritage. Education grows more accessible, opening doors to knowledge and understanding for many. Hope and connection. In the quiet moments of the 21st century, a child's laugh, a shared meal, a helping hand, the enduring spirit of humanity shines bright. The story of our world continues to unfold, page by page, in acts of courage, kindness, and discovery. Now, breathe deeply and feel the gentle heartbeat of our shared home. A world of endless stories, waiting for the next quiet chapter to begin.